Hello, and welcome to my scriptural study to prove why the certain seed is a false doctrine. The reason I'm doing this, just for a little background, is when I first started coming to the truth about Father and how He wants us to keep His laws and commandments. I went into a deep dive study and I started looking into everything. And during that time, there was a lot of good information that I was finding in the Bible, and then a lot of crazy information I was finding on the internet. And one of those things that I came across was this whole belief in the serpent seed. That people actually are believing that Eve had sex with the serpent, and that is why Cain was born, and that Cain was the father of this serpent seed that has been, proliferating, I guess, mankind. And there's the children of Seth that are good, and the children of Cain that are all serpent seed because it came from sex. They also believe that Adam also, because he ate of the fruit, and they believe that that term ate of the fruit or eating of the fruit was having sex. So they also believe that Adam had sex with the serpent. And so this is why I'm doing this right now. This is my um, this is why I'm doing this. Is because to prove that it is a false doctrine using only scripture. So there's going to be a number of things that we're going to go through, but I wanted to scroll down here first to let you know the books. And this sheet that I'm working off of, I will upload and put into the description or whatever, you'll be able to find it. So you can download it. And if you don't want to even listen to me, you can just read all these things yourself. But to tell you what we're going to use as references is the KJV version of the Bible, the book of Jasher, the book of Jubilees or Little Genesis, the book of Enoch, um, and then we're also going to look into the antiquities of the Jews. So let's get into it. All right, and I always forget, but we're also going to be using the Bible app called eSword. I will be using the KJV Plus, and that is the King James Version with strong numbers. I will be using this to also be able to describe and define words as we go into them. All right. So, reasons why the serpent seed is a false doctrine. These first three things we're going to go over first because they all exist in the same stories. And we're going to go through every single book that has these stories in it, for instance, the King James Version. And what we're going to learn is the tree of good and evil is an actual physical tree that has physical fruit that can be eaten with the mouth for food. The serpent was an actual beast, an animal, and the fruit of the tree is an actual fruit, like an apple, orange. It's a fruit that can be touched, picked, tasted, and eaten. Now, these proofs, again, and precepts are going to be found in the KJV, Jasher, Jubilees, and Enoch, and also the Antiquities of the Jews. The second point that we're going to reveal is that Adam never spoke with the serpent or had conversations. In no scripture will you ever find Adam and the serpent having any conversation, or even at the same place at the same time. The serpent was in the garden, yes, and lived amongst the garden, but we don't find any interaction. We only find the interaction between Adam and Eve. And then lastly, the serpent was an actual serpent, and it was a different animal at the time that it was beguiling Eve, and its punishment was to be changed at that moment into a different creature. It lost the power of speech. It lost its feet. It used to have feet. We're going to find those truths in here also. And then also, Father put enmity and hatred. And if you'll realize this, every man, when you walk up on a snake, you immediately hate it. You want to kill it. And that snake wants to bite you. That's the enmity that Father put between Eve's seed, which is all of us, and snakes. Okay? And this is best described in the Antiquity of the Jews, and these precepts are also found in KJV, Jasher, Jubilees, and Enoch. So let's get started. We're first going to go to the KJV. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my eSword. I'm going to go to Genesis, and I believe we're going to start at 2:16. Let's go take a look just to make sure here. Here we go. 2:16, 17. Okay, so let's go ahead and read the story of Adam and Eve when they were placed in the garden. So this is right after all of creation. And Yahweh Elohim commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden thou mayst freely eat. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to look at this, H6068, for the word tree. Down here, we're going to look at the Brown Driver Briggs, and the definition of this word, which is et, is tree, wood, timber, stock, plank. You can see all these trees, wood, pieces of wood, gallows, firewood, cedar wood, woody flax. This is a tree. We can also look in our Strongs to find out that H6086 is a tree from its firmness, hence wood. Carpenter, gallows, helve, pine, plank, staff. It's a tree. I also like using this because it tells us the very first time, or all the times that this was used for the word wood. All right, so you can go and cross-reference all of those. Now let's continue. And a garden, well, we know what a garden is. Now let's look at the word eat. Okay, so we are going to use contextual clues. We're talking about trees in a garden and the word eat. Now when you click on it, it's H398, which is ahal, and that means to eat, to devour, to burn up, to feed upon, or feed, to eat, or if you're a bird or a beast, it's to devour, to consume. If you go over to Strong's, ahal, to burn up, consume, devour, dine, eat, feed, food freely, meat. Like some people say we had meats together. That also means hal, which is eat. All right. So these are clear words that I believe that anyone can understand. We're talking about a tree that's in a garden that you can eat from. Okay, now let's continue. Now that we've defined these, I'll stop to define any other words that are concerning on that people have said, oh, well, it's not an actual tree. That was Satan, and the fruit of the tree was his sperm. No, we're looking exactly at what the Bible says. And it says we're talking about a tree that's made out of wood in a garden that you can eat. Or actually, in this, instance, he's going to tell us not to eat one of them. Let's continue. But of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it. For in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. Again, we're using the same word eat as we were up here. Okay. An eatest is a different form of eat, but it's still H. Okay. And then we're going to go to, so he's defined the law. He said, this is all for you, but don't eat of it. Now we're going to go to Genesis 3:1. Okay, now we're going to talk about the serpent. The serpent, let's look at what serpent means. Nakash, a snake, a serpent. A serpent, a snake, serpent, a fleeing serpent. It's a snake. Or at that time, because we know now that it removed, his feet was removed, it was probably most likely like a beautiful dragon. But let's just call it a serpent because that's what the Bible says. Now let's see what this serpent is and what it was classified by Father. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. So beast is a living, alive, flowing, lively, active. A beast is kaki, and it means a wild beast. It was something that was alive, and it was in the field. And let's look at field, which is sa de, from an unused root meaning to spread out. A field is flat, country, field, ground, land, soil, like the wild. So we know that the serpent was a beast of the field. Okay, so it's defined right there. Now, the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field, which the Yahweh Elohim had made. So Father made it, put it in the garden. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath Elohim said, Ye shall not eat, again, we are at H398, of every tree of the garden. So nothing has changed. We're still talking about a tree of wood in the garden. And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat, again, this is to eat, of the fruit. And let's look at fruit. Fruit is mene. So fruit is mene. And we know that fruit from earlier, actually, we probably should do that and go define the very, well, we'll just stay here. So mene is fruit. That's what comes off of trees, what comes off of, the fruit. Okay. We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim has said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it. Okay, so now we know you can eat the fruit and you can actually touch it. To touch, to reach, to strike. Naga, to lay hand upon. By implication, to reach. So it's something that you can touch. Okay. So the serpent said to the woman, Ye shall not surely die. For Elohim doth know that in that day that you eat, then your eyes shall be open, and ye shall be as Elohim, knowing good and evil. Now, and when the woman saw that the tree, again, tree, was good for food, ma'akal, which means an eatable, provender, flesh and fruit, meat, victual, that's what it means in Strong's, and fruit, meat, means it also in Brown Higgs, or Brown Driver Briggs. All right, so she literally said, or it literally says that when she saw it, she seen with her eyes that it was good for food, and it was pleasant to the eyes. It's something that she could eat, and a tree to be desired to make one wise. She took of the fruit, again, mene, which is the fruit, apples, oranges, bananas of a tree, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. And the eyes of them were both open. So we're still talking about eating with your mouth, devouring, consuming. So let's fast forward to when Father finds out. So the voice of Yahweh Elohim was walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Yahweh Elohim amongst the trees. And Yahweh Elohim called unto Adam and said, Where are you? And he said, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself. So Father knows immediately. Well, he already knew, but okay. So now he questions them. So this is Father speaking. This is not, and he said, Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten, again, achal, of the tree, again, a tree, whereof I commanded you that thou should not eat? Doesn't say anything about sex, doesn't say anything about laying with anybody. He's talking about a tree that has edible fruit that he told them not to eat. Now, I'm going to prove this later that the tree actually had fruit. So just stay with me because I want you to see what it says in the scriptures, how it's always the same story. So yeah, he knew immediately, and they said, Yeah, the woman who you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree and I ate. And the woman said, Oh, the serpent talked me into it and I ate. Okay. They ate it. They consumed it. Okay. So now let's go to Genesis 3:22 because I want to show you what Father had to say and also to prove that this was an actual tree. Okay, we're right here at Genesis 3:22. And Yahweh Elohim said, Behold, the man is become as one of us to know good and evil. And now, lest he put forth his hand. So this is just reaffirming that it was when it said to touch, that we weren't talking about laying with a woman. He literally states he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life. So the tree of life, he could have went and eaten of the tree of life, but he didn't. or she could have. They always had the ability to eat the fruit of the tree of life, which is, just a side note, and they didn't. But anyways, the tree of life also had fruit, and they were worried, the Elohim were worried, or Elohim was worried that if he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat again, that he would live forever. So that's why he sent him out of Eden, is because now he knew good and evil. If he ate of the fruit, physically eating the fruit of the tree of life, then not only would he know good and evil, he would live forever. And that is actually a blessing, because now that we know good and evil, life is pretty difficult. All right, so let's go back to my notes. All right, now we're going to skip over to the book of Jasher to see what the book of Jasher has to say about this. Let me find it real quickly. Okay, now we're going to go to the book of Jasher, and we're going to go into chapter 1. All right, and the references we're going to use are 1:7, 1:10, and 3:16. So 1:7, chapter 1, verse 7. And excuse me, and Yahweh Elohim took Adam and his wife, and he placed them in the Garden of Eden. All right, here. To dress it and keep it, and he commanded them and said unto them, and this is just a precept, or this is another place that Father had this recorded to prove what it said in Genesis, that this was an actual physical tree. Let me keep going. And he placed them in the Garden of Eden to dress it and keep it. And he commanded them and said unto them, from every tree of the garden you may eat, but from the tree of the garden of or knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day that you eat, therefore you shall surely die. Okay? And then here we go again with he put them in the garden. And the serpent, which Elohim had created with them in the earth, came to them to incite them to transgress the command of Yah, which he had commanded them. And the serpent enticed and persuaded the woman to eat from the tree of knowledge. And the woman hearkened to the voice of the serpent, and she transgressed the word of Yah, and took from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and she ate. And she took from it, and gave also to her husband, and he ate. Okay, I'd just like to stop here and state that she took something from something. You can't, well, I don't even want to go there. She took a piece of fruit from the tree that she had already eaten and gave it to Adam. She handed it to him. She took it. He took it. He knew what he was doing. He ate it. So Adam and his wife transgressed the command of Yah, which he commanded them, and Yah knew it. And his anger was kindled against them, and he cursed them. All right, now I'm going to 12. And Yahweh Elohim drove them that day from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which they were taken. And they went and dwelt at the east of the Garden of Eden, and Adam knew his wife. Okay, so now we know that they actually ate that fruit. Okay, it was a fruit. We covered 1:7, 1:10. Now let's go to 3:16. So I'm going to go all the way back up to the home to find chapter 13, or chapter 3. So we're going to go to 3 and 16, 3:16. All right, so now this is another place in Jasher where it references the tree of good and evil, the tree of knowledge, and that it's an actual fruit. And Adam died because he ate of the tree of knowledge, he and his children after him, as Yahweh Elohim had spoken. All right, now we are going to go to the book of Jubilees. All right, 17. Okay, let's go look at Jubilees 3:17. So this, the beginning of this is going through what happened before all this. All right. And after the completion of the 7 years, which he had completed there, 7 years exactly, and in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, the serpent came and approached the woman, and the serpent said to the woman, hath Yah commanded you, saying, ye shall not eat of the tree of the garden? And she said to it, of all the fruit of the trees of the garden, Yah has said unto us, eat. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Yah has said unto us, ye shall not eat therefore, neither shall you touch it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, ye shall not surely die. For Yah doth know that on that day ye shall eat thereof, your eyes will be open, and ye will be as Yah's, or be as Elohim, and ye will know good and evil. And the woman saw that the tree, that it was agreeable and pleasant to the eyes, and that its fruit was good for food. And she took thereof and eat. Again, we're using the same words that we described and defined in the KJV version. And when she first had covered her shame with fig leaves, she gave therefore to Adam, and he ate, and his eyes were open, and he saw that he was naked. And he took fig leaves and sewed them together, and made an apron for himself, and covered his shame. And Elohim cursed the serpent, and was wroth with it forever. And he was wroth with the woman, because she hearkened to the voice of the serpent. So the serpent had a voice, because remember, in the Garden of Eden, in the beginning, all of them were able to communicate with the animals. The animals were able to communicate with Adam and Eve, and vice versa. So the voice of the serpent, and did eat, and he said unto her, I shall greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy pains. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy return shall be unto your husband, and he will rule over you. And to Adam also he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, not the serpent, but the wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee that thou should not eat thereof, cursed be the ground for thy sake. Cursed be the ground for thy sake. Thorns and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat thy bread in the sweat of thy face, till thou returnest to the earth from whence thou wast taken. For earth thou art, and unto earth thou shalt return. All right, so again, here in Jubilees, we have the exact same story: a tree, an animal that beguiled them. Okay, now we're going to go to the book of Enoch. Okay, 32:2. So let's find Enoch. All right, so now that brings us to the book of Enoch. We're going to chapter 32. So let's get over there. Excuse me. And I came to the garden of righteousness, I, and from afar off, trees more numerous than I. These trees, and great 2 trees there, very great, beautiful, and glorious, and magnificent. And the tree of knowledge, whose holy fruit they eat, and know great wisdom. Okay, now we're describing the 2 great trees. So that tree is in height like the fir, and its leaves are like those of the carob tree. So now we know that this is an actual physical tree that we're describing. It's very tall like the fir tree, and it has leaves, and those are like of the carob tree. And its fruit is like the clusters of the vine. So now we know that the fruit of this tree of knowledge looks kind of like grapes. They're very beautiful, and the fragrance of the tree penetrates afar. Then I said, how beautiful is this tree, and how attractive it is to look. Remember, Eve said that it was pleasant to look upon? Then Raphael, the holy angel, who was with me, answered me and said, this is the tree of wisdom. And it references back to Adam and Eve. This is the tree of wisdom, of which thy father, old in years, and thy aged mother, who were before thee, have eaten. And they learnt wisdom, and their eyes were open, and they knew that they were naked, and they were driven out of the garden. So this lovely paragraph right here just proves without a shadow of a doubt that the tree of wisdom and the tree of good and evil and the tree of knowledge, those 2 trees, were actual physical trees. But wait, there's more. So we're going to go to the book of Antiquities. This is the Antiquity of the Jews, written by Flavius Josephus, and it is considered to be a very accurate historical account of the Hebrew history, of the history of the Jews. So we're going to go to chapter 1, verse 3. All right. It says, Moses said further that Yah planted a paradise in the east, flourishing with all sorts of trees, and that among them was the tree of life, and another of knowledge, whereby was to be known what was good and evil. And that when he brought Adam and his wife, I'm right here, into the garden, he commanded them to take care of the plants. Let me make this just a little bit bigger. All right. When he brought him into the garden, he commanded them to take care of the plants. Um, then it goes on to say how the garden was watered by the river Pison and such. So we'll go down to verse 4. Yah therefore commanded that Adam and his wife should eat of all the rest of the plants, but to abstain from the tree of knowledge, and foretold to them that if they touched it, it would prove their destruction. Now, earlier I was talking about everybody having the same language. But while all the living creatures had one language at that time, the serpent, which lived together, he lived in the garden with Adam and his wife, showed an envious disposition. Okay? So the serpent just didn't like them. And he wanted to basically trip them up, so hopefully they would lead into calamities, it says. So it says, which means he overcame the woman and persuaded her to despise the command of Yah. Now you can go back and read the whole thing if you'd like. Now, when she had tasted of that tree and was pleased with its fruit, she persuaded Adam to make use of it also. Because once she ate the fruit, she realized she was naked. And in one account, it says she immediately covered herself and made something for herself first and then gave it to Adam to eat. And okay, so upon this, they perceived that they were both become naked. All right, so we see right here that again, it was a tree, it was something to be eaten, and they did eat it. All right, now we're going to go further. I believe that what we've shown now is that the same story existed in all of these texts. In all of these texts, it uses the words that we defined as achal, which is eating, the tree, fruit. Okay, this was an actual fruit. It was an actual tree. They ate of it. The serpent was an actual serpent. Now let's see what happened to the serpent. We have two very important places that defines what happened to Adam, Eve, and the serpent. And I'm going to touch on this real quickly because it brings us into, it's a segue into the next part of what we're going to prove. So, and Yahweh Elohim said unto the woman, what is this? I'm in Genesis 3:13, that thou hast done. And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. And earlier the man, and it says, and the man said, the woman who you gave me, it was your fault, you gave it to me. She gave me of the tree, and I did eat. Again, tree and eat. Okay. And Yahweh Elohim said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle. This was a physical creature, an animal, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust thou shalt eat all the days of thy life. And I will put enmity. Let's look up enmity. Because I don't know about you, but every time I see a snake, I have enmity. It means hatred, hostility, hatred. So anytime you see something that you have enmity for, you hate it, okay? And the reason we hate snakes is because of this. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman. They're separate creatures. And between thy seed, okay, between thy seed, he's saying between your seed, which is your children, and her seed. It's a different seed. Okay? It didn't say I'm going to put a difference between our seed because now I put my seed in you. No, it's a different seed because he's a creature. Okay? And between thy seed and your seed, it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Now, a lot of people want to get weird about this, and this literally means that people are the offspring of Eve will hate snakes forever, and you will want to step on its head, or if you do step near it, it's going to bruise your heel, or you'll want to kill it. Okay, that's what it is: enmity, hatred between a woman and a snake. It's exactly what it says. Then he goes on to tell Eve her punishment. And I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception and sorrow, and thou shalt bring forth children, and your desire shall be to your husband, and he shall rule over thee. And unto Adam he said, because you slept with the serpent, because the serpent beguiled you. No, he says, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of your wife, and hast eaten, again, we're using the same word, akal, of the tree, which I commanded you, saying, thou shalt not eat of it. So cursed is the ground for thy sake, and sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns and thistles shall it bring forth, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face thou shalt eat bread till thou return unto the ground, for out of it was you taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust you shall return. Okay, so let's go look what the book of antiquity. I really like how the book of antiquities um, goes through and explains this. So I'm really excited to show you this. Okay, let's go to the book of antiquities. Okay, now let's see what it says here. So we're talking about Father saying, why would you disobey your commands? So it says, however, Adam excused his sin and entreated Yah not to be angry at him, and laid the blame on what was done upon his wife, and said he was deceived by her, and thence became an offender, while she again accused the serpent. But Yah allotted him punishment because he weakly submitted to the counsel of his wife. Again, nowhere does it say he ever even talked to the serpent. And said, the ground should not henceforth yield its fruits of its own accord, but that when it should be harassed by their labor, it should bring forth some of its fruits, and refuse to bring forth others. He also made Eve liable to the inconveniency of breeding, and the sharp pains of bringing forth children, and this because she persuaded Adam with the same arguments wherewith the serpent had persuaded her, and have thereby brought him into a calamitous condition. He also, he also deprived the serpent of speech out of indignation at his malicious disposition towards Adam, towards man. Besides this, he inserted poison under his tongue and made him an enemy to men. Remember the enmity? Here we're going to talk about it. And suggested to man, that they should direct their strokes against his head, that being the place where lay his mischievous designs towards men. See, when I said men up here towards Adam, that's Adam, it means men. Wherein lay his mischievous designs towards men, and it being easiest to take vengeance on him that way. And when he had deprived him, so when Yah had deprived him of the use of his feet, he made him go rolling all along and dragging himself upon the ground. And when Yah had appointed these penalties for men, he removed Adam and Eve out of the garden into another place. So we know that it was a tree. We know it had fruit. You could touch it. You could taste it. You could eat it. And they did that. The snake or the serpent was changed from some sort of creature or beast of the field that had 4 feet to having no feet, which we probably could correctly assume is a snake now. They even have those weird appendages, if you want to look at the biology of a snake, where the feet used to be. And it goes along, running around on the ground, dirt as its food. All right, now let's get into our next point. That was only one point, but this is going to go quick now. My second point as to why the serpent seed is a false doctrine is Adam is indeed the father of Cain. And this is backed up in every single book that we use as scripturally relevant. The KJV, it's in Jasher, it's in Jubilees, it's in Enoch, it's also in the Antiquities of the Jew. If we cannot accept the lineage as it's written, then I believe that discounts everything that we accept as the genealogy of people. If you can't accept the very first one, the very first lineage given in the Bible is this. And Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from Yahweh. And Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain. It says that Adam knew his wife. He was the father of Cain. This is in the KJV. Let's now go to the book of Jasher. We're in Jasher 1:12, it looks like. Or 1:11. And Adam and his wife transgressed the command of Yah, which he commanded them, and Yah knew it, and his anger was kindled against them, and he cursed them, and he drove them that day from Eden to till the ground from which they were taken, and they went and dwelt at the east of Eden, or at the east of the Garden of Eden. And Adam knew his wife Eve, and she bore 2 sons and 3 daughters. And she called the name of firstborn Cain, saying, I have obtained a man from Yahweh. And then she, named the other ones. It says Adam knew his wife, and she bore 2 sons and 3 daughters. I don't know how people can dispute this. This just backs up what it says in the KJV. Now let's go to Jubilees. So we're talking right after they were thrown out. And it says, and he made them coats of skin and clothed them and sent them forth from the Garden of Eden. We're in Jubilees 3. And on that day on which Adam went forth from the garden, he offered a sweet savor and offering frankincense, galbanum stacked in the spices in the morning with the rising of the sun from the day when he covered his shame. And here's another precept from earlier. And on that day was closed the mouth of all beasts and cattle and of birds and whatever walks and whatever moves, so that they could no longer speak. Okay. For they had all spoken one with another with one lip and with one tongue. And he sent out of the Garden of Eden all flesh that was in the Garden of Eden. So even the serpent, the new snake, got thrown out. And all flesh was scattered according to its kind, according to its types, and to the places from which it had been created for them. And he gave Adam alone the wherewithal to cover his shame of all the beasts and cattle. That's why we wear clothes and they don't. On this account it is prescribed in the heavenly tables as touching all those who know the judgment of the law, that they should cover their shame and should not uncover themselves as the Gentiles uncover themselves. Now, that was a long time to get to this. And on the new moon of the 4th month, Adam and his wife went forth from Eden, and they dwelt in the land of Eldah, in the land of their creation. And Adam called the name of his wife Eve, and they had no sons till the first Jubilee. And we know that, okay, and after this, he knew her. Okay, Jubilees 4. He knew her. Adam knew her. And in the 3rd week, in the 2nd Jubilee, she gave birth to Cain. And then in the 4th, she gave birth to Abel. In the 5th, she gave birth to her daughter Awan. So there again, we see that Adam knew his wife. She conceived and bore Cain, also Abel, and Awan. All right. Now let's go to, we did Jubilees, we did Jasher. Let's go to the book of Antiquities. We are in chapter 2, verse 1. Adam and Eve had 2 sons. Adam and Eve had 2 sons. The elder of them was named Cain, which name, which is interpreted, signifies a possession, something given to you. The younger was Abel. They also had daughters. All right. Okay, so because of this, we know that Adam knew his wife, and she bore him children. And it even says here in the book of Jasher, and the boys grew up, and their father. It even calls Adam their father. Okay, I don't see how this could be disputed, but here is all the scriptural evidence that Adam indeed was the father of Cain. And if you can dispute, or you want to dispute, the very first time that genealogy was given, then you have to dispute all of it. Adam was the father of Cain. Adam and Eve had sex. He knew her. They had Cain together. There was no serpent involved. Now, here's one more piece that I would like to share with you. And this to me is just the kicker, one of the kickers. Okay. If Adam had sex with the serpent, would that not have made him a sodomite? If the serpent could have sex. Let's do our hypothetical thinking. If the serpent inserted seed into Eve, then the serpent was obviously male, because there's only one way to get seed into a female, and that is through the male appendage. Okay? So that would mean, if we're following their logic, that Adam, because he ate of the fruit, quote unquote, which means that Eve had sex, then he had sex also with the snake or the serpent. Either the serpent penetrated him or he penetrated the snake, which would make him a sodomite. Okay? His lineage from that point on, Noah's lineage could not be perfect because he came from Adam, who in this scenario is a sodomite. And it says, there shall be no whore of the daughters of Israel, nor a sodomite of the sons of Israel. So I'm not sure how Adam could be the father of the sons of Israel being a sodomite himself, or being sodomized. He participated. And then lastly, Adam and Eve ate the fruit of the tree in year 8 and were banished from Eden in year 8. But according to the scriptures, Adam knew Eve and bare Cain in the years between 71 and 77. And we can find that in the book of Jubilees. So we're going to go to that right, hopefully now and easily. Okay. So right here, it says, and they had no sons. This is Jubilees 3:34. And they had no sons till the first Jubilee. Okay. And up here, it says, and in the 3rd week in the 2nd Jubilee, 64 to 70, she gave birth to Cain. Okay, so I'm sorry. She gave birth to Cain in 64 to 70. Adam and Eve were thrown out of the garden in 8 a.m. Cain was not born until 64 to 70 a.m. Like after, that's a lot of time. That's 42 years to the first Jubilee. If it was 8 a.m. when they got thrown out, that would be 42 years to the first Jubilee. And then she did not give birth until the 2nd or the 3rd week in the 2nd Jubilee, which would be years 64 to 70. So I just really hope that this kind of sinks in. There's no way. The timeline is completely off. Okay. Let me take a real quick second to, okay. This is when they got into the garden. Okay. After the completion of the 7 years exactly. And in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, the serpent came and approached the woman. Okay, so we're identifying the timeline here. It was 8 a.m. and then, and on that day, which Adam went forth from the garden, so he was banished from the garden, and that was in 8 a.m. They had no son until the first Jubilee. Well, we know the first Jubilee doesn't begin, or the first Jubilee is not counted until the year 50. So years 0 creation to 50 is the first Jubilee. The 2nd Jubilee is from a 51 to 100. So if they were thrown out in 8 a.m. and they did not have Cain until 64 to 70 a.m., that's a really long time for her to maintain and keep that seed inside of her. I don't mean to digress, but I feel at this point, we've proven the point that that is a false doctrine. I was exposed to it too, because I was looking at all kinds of different stuff. It wasn't exposed to me like by the Father in my heart, but as I was researching on the internet outside of the Bible, all of these other ideas come up. So I hope that you do your research, because I don't see how you can get that deceptive doctrine out of any of these verses. I love all who are listening, and I really hope that this helps, because you need to step away from that doctrine and repent. I've had to step away from things that I thought, even after I've come to the way, to Father's law, there's things that I learned in the beginning from others that were incorrect, and it's okay to say we were wrong. So anyways, I hope this finds you all in peace. Shalom, and I love you.